Gal Gadot was once the crown jewel of Warner Brothers, the face of Wonder Woman, and a global icon. But then came her ill-fated attempt to play Cleopatra. The backlash was immediate. Audiences questioned why an Israeli actress was cast to play one of history's most famous Egyptian figures. Instead of excitement, the project became a lightning rod for debates about representation, and Gadot's insistence that she was honoring history only made it worse. The controversy overshadowed her talent, and Gadot's once unstoppable momentum slowed to a crawl. Even her second Wonder Woman outing was slammed for being preachy and incoherent. Worse, audiences who once adored her charisma began to see her as wooden and miscast, as if every project became more about headlines than performance. Her imagined sing-along during the pandemic only worsened things, painting her as tone-deaf and out of touch. What should have been her golden age turned into proof that even A-listers can flop when Hollywood pushes branding over authenticity. Gadot went from global superstar to lightning rod, a clear warning that miscasting in the name of messaging can sink even the biggest names. Awkwafina. Awkwafina shot to fame with Crazy Rich Asians and The Farewell, hailed as a fresh comedic voice who could bridge indie credibility with blockbuster appeal. Hollywood quickly positioned her as the quirky face of a new, diverse era, casting her in everything from Shang-Chi to Raya and the Last Dragon. But the overexposure hit fast. Critics accused her of playing the same sarcastic sidekick in every role, while social media piled on with accusations of cultural appropriation over her black accent. Instead of being celebrated, she became polarizing. Her interviews, once seen as funny and offbeat, began to read as defensive, doubling down on the same persona audiences were already tired of. And when fans asked for versatility, studios handed her more of the same roles, making her look more like a brand than an actress. What should have been a smooth rise turned into a steady backlash, with fans complaining that studios pushed her into roles that felt more like checkboxes than characters. Awkwafina didn't vanish, but she became proof that Hollywood can burn out its so-called fresh faces by using them as mascots for messaging rather than building roles with substance. Zoe Saldana. Zoe Saldana should have been untouchable. She's literally the star of the 3 highest-grossing franchises in history: Avatar, Star Trek, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Yet despite her blockbuster resume, she stumbled badly with projects pushed as woke milestones. The most infamous example was her casting as Nina Simone, a role blasted for tone deafness and reliance on skin-darkening makeup. The backlash was so fierce that Saldana later apologized, admitting she should never have taken the role. Instead of boosting her credibility, it became a permanent mark on her career. Even in Avatar: The Way of Water, critics noted how invisible she felt behind the CGI, asking whether audiences actually connected with her or just with James Cameron's tech. Fans who once thought she was the ultimate franchise queen began questioning whether her stardom was built on her talent or simply her ability to stand behind green screens. And when the most memorable thing about your roles is digital makeup, the shine inevitably fades. Saldana's career became the paradox of being everywhere and yet strangely underappreciated. Hollywood's push to brand her as a symbol of representation only highlighted how fragile that image can be when choices backfire. Lena Dunham. Lena Dunham was once hailed as the voice of a generation, the creative force behind HBO's Girls. For a moment, she was everywhere: magazine covers, interviews, speaking gigs. But as her activism got louder, her projects collapsed under the weight of her public persona. Girls was criticized for lacking diversity, despite Dunham being framed as a feminist pioneer. Later projects like Camping and Catherine Called Birdie were sold as woke, progressive comedies, but landed with a thud, dismissed as smug and self-indulgent. Dunham's personal controversies, from awkward comments to Twitter feuds, only magnified the backlash. Audiences no longer saw her as an edgy disruptor, but as someone trapped in her own echo chamber, endlessly repackaging the same identity politics without the sharpness to back it up. Even her attempts at directing films were panned, with critics calling them indulgent exercises nobody needed. Her name, once synonymous with edgy relevance, is now shorthand for projects that overpromise and underdeliver. Dunham didn't just flop, she flamed out in real time, leaving a career that Hollywood tried to brand as groundbreaking, but audiences mostly rejected. Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman made her name as a razor-sharp comedian who pushed boundaries with shock humor. But in recent years, her career shifted into activism-heavy projects that audiences found more scolding than entertaining. Her voice role in Ralph Breaks the Internet was pitched as meta-feminist fun, but many parents complained it came off like a lecture stuffed into a kids' movie. Later, Silverman leaned into podcasting and progressive commentary, often more focused on moralizing than making people laugh. Her shift from comedy to commentary wasn't gradual, it was abrupt. And fans who once valued her boldness began to feel alienated instead of entertained. Even stand-up specials, once her strong suit, started sounding more like campaign ads than comedy routines. Instead of being edgy, she was accused of being self-righteous, and her reputation as a fearless comic began to erode. Silverman still pops up in Hollywood, but she's no longer seen as the daring voice she once was. More like another figure who traded comedy for constant commentary. The result? A career that went from boundary-pushing funny to background noise, with audiences quietly tuning out.
Emilia Clarke. Emilia Clarke's Game of Thrones fame should have set her up for a legendary film career. She had global recognition, charisma, and an army of fans. Instead, her big studio ventures became cautionary tales. Solo, a Star Wars story, billed her as the next great female lead in the galaxy, but audiences barely connected with her character. Years later, Clarke tried to reinvent herself with Marvel's Secret Invasion, hyped as a gritty, diverse entry in the MCU, but instead of reigniting her star power, it fizzled out. Critics panned her performance as flat, and fans mocked the show as another lifeless attempt at representation first, story second. Even die-hard fans admitted that while they loved her as Daenerys, outside of Westeros, she often came across as tentative and miscast, more hype than delivery. The projects never played to her strengths, leaving her exposed in roles that looked better on paper than on screen. Clarke's problem wasn't lack of talent, it was being handed roles designed more for headlines than for heart. Once celebrated as the mother of dragons, she's now remembered for proving that studio hype doesn't always translate into audience love.
Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman has an Oscar, a Harvard degree, and a reputation as one of Hollywood's smartest actresses. Yet even she couldn't escape the woke career trap. Her return to Marvel as Mighty Thor was sold as a groundbreaking moment for female superheroes. The marketing leaned hard on her muscular transformation. Interviews were filled with empowerment slogans, and the studio acted like Portman was about to redefine the genre. But when the film landed, audiences didn't buy it. Critics said the story was thin. Fans called her performance awkward, and the whole spectacle was mocked as a desperate stunt. Portman's brilliance in films like Black Swan only made the contrast harsher, highlighting just how out of place she looked in Marvel's hollow experiment. And the harder the studio tried to sell her as revolutionary, the more audiences tuned out. Portman's career didn't collapse. She's still respected, but the Thor experiment became a symbol of Marvel's decline. Instead of inspiring a new generation, it reminded everyone that even Oscar winners can look lost when the message matters more than the movie.
Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence went from America's favorite relatable star to one of the clearest examples of Hollywood burnout. After dominating with The Hunger Games and earning an Oscar, she was everywhere. Red carpets, viral interviews, talk shows. But then came her pivot into activism-heavy roles and comments that alienated audiences. Her performance in Don't Look Up was positioned as sharp political satire, but many found it smug and condescending. Interviews where she framed herself as Hollywood's first female action star only deepened the backlash, as fans rolled their eyes at the exaggeration. Even diehard supporters admitted her spontaneity had calcified into overexposure, with every interview sounding more like branding than personality. The relatable girl shtick that once made her famous now felt staged, leaving audiences nostalgic for the unpolished star they first embraced. Lawrence's attempt to merge stardom with constant social messaging turned her into a divisive figure. Instead of the universally beloved talent she once was, she became another actress accused of lecturing her audience. Her career didn't vanish, but her reputation shifted from Golden Girl to overexposed activist, and audiences noticed the change.